Hi there, and today we're going to have a go at motorising the new Spider-Man subway train. But it's too boring just to do it with one, so I've got two of them. Now this set came out on August the 1st, and if you're a regular viewer of my channel, you'll probably have seen my August the 1st video where I went to the Lego store and bought these. And as Lego don't release many Lego trains, and I'm a big Lego trains fan, I'm really pleased that we've got a new subway train. They did make a Lego set of this scene many years ago. It was a lot shorter train back then, and this is a lot more substantial. In my August the 1st video, I did say one of the only real annoyances I have is that they have reinstated this original 1980s train window piece, the tall thin one. However, all the windows down the side are the new Lego City building piece, so you normally get these in just regular buildings. They used to do a really nice train window which was curved in the corners and it had a specific train window piece. But that piece isn't made anymore, and also they've never made it in light blue grey anyway. There are a few third-party companies who've made it in this colour, but generally I stick to genuine Lego pieces on my builds, so I'm going to have to keep these windows as they are. If you're familiar with the original Spider-Man films, this is the Tobey Maguire Spider-Man era, and in this scene it's a runaway subway train and he's standing on the front and he's firing out his webs, trying to attach them to buildings to stop the train. However, as you can see, various bits of buildings are flying off and landing back on the train itself. We've got some on his webs on the side, there's a random piece flying in the air here, and there's a few pieces on the roof as well. So I don't want this to be a Spider-Man train, so we're going to do a few modifications firstly just to make it a little bit more generic, and then we're going to go on to motorising it. But the first thing to do is de-Spider-Manify it, and I've already done that to the other carriage. We need to do it to this one as well. Then we're going to have two plain carriages as our starting point. And just before we get on to the modifications, a very quick shout out to my channel members. Thank you so much for your support. And if you enjoy my videos and you'd like to support the channel in some way, you can either become a channel member by clicking the join button or the link in the description below. That'll give you all the details and you could get your name on a brick at the start of my videos. Alternatively, if you ever buy Lego sets from lego.com, you can use my affiliate link in the description below, and it doesn't cost you anything at all. However, Lego give me a little bit of commission on everything that people buy. So thank you for your support, and let's get on to those modifications. Now, first thing to do is we've got these Techno bricks all the way down the side where you can attach things like the flying pieces of masonry like that. However, they're in rather odd positions and I prefer them to be plain, so what we're going to do, we're going to space them out evenly and also turn them 90 degrees so we get the plain side of the Techno brick rather than the one with the axle hole in it. The other thing to change is that I do like that they've got the Lego Transport logo on the end of the train. However, they've got it on diametrically opposite corners. So we've got one here, we've also got one here. It'd be much better if they were both at one end of the train, and then we can put them at the other end of the other carriage. So the first thing I'm going to do is strip down the top layer of this carriage so we can get to all these bricks down here, and we're going to rearrange them. So that's the complete top half removed. We're not actually going to need to do too many modifications to this part, only on the one which is going to contain the battery box for the motor, and also we're going to change around these destination signs as well. But first of all, let's go on to the base part. So like I said, I want to space out the Technic axle bricks more evenly, and we can just pop those out like that, turn them 90 degrees, and then we've got a plain brick. And we've got just enough that if we do two of these textured bricks and one of the plain bricks, we'll have enough. So if we can move this one along to there, shuffle those two up like that, turn this one around, and if we reinstate that one, we just need to turn this one round, and then now we're more evenly spaced and we don't have those axle holes. And then I've done the same to the other side. However, what we're going to do is pop that tile off and get rid of the white brick with the stud on the side. Take this axle brick and put it down that end after turning it round, and then we can put the Lego Transport logo at this end like that, and then we've got both logos at the same end of the carriage. Now, because Lego designed this as a standalone train, they've got a driving position at both ends. However, because we're going to add two carriages together, we don't need this second position. We're obviously going to need one driving position at the end of each carriage, but not two. So we're going to remove this one completely and space out the bench seats slightly. So first of all, take out that lovely control panel we've got and the driver's chair. Then we've got this studs not on the side brick. Take out this black panel which was underneath the control. We are going to reinstate this piece, but we are going to lose that white plate off it because we don't need those. So we're going to reinstate that, which sits just underneath the door at the end. Then we just need to shuffle these down ever so slightly so we've got a bit more space here, space in the middle, and a space at the end. Now, because we've moved the benches around, we now do have a space here where the cutout hole from the train base plate is. So the first new piece not in the set, I've got a 2x2 dark bluish grey plate, and I'm just going to pop that in, and then we can cover up that hole. Also, completely not essential, just to improve the aesthetics slightly, we've got this bracket piece where the control panel is sitting. If we pop that off, we can add in just a plain 1x2 brick, and then that gives us a little bit more extra space at this end. Then I just need to reinstate the backs of the bench seats, and we're all done on this side. Next, I'm going to do exactly the same to the other carriage. However, we're going to leave out the second bench seat to give us space to the battery box. And if you're making this modification to your own set and you've only got a single carriage, obviously this is the version you'll follow, not this one. Also, when making the second carriage, I knew I was going to make this modification at some time, so I didn't stick all the stickers onto the second version. So what we're going to do is remove the control panel from this set and get the other one from the other carriage and place it there, and then both drivers have control panels. So next we're going to move on to the wheels. As standard, when you build the set, these wheels don't move at all. They're just stuck to the bottom of the base plate with these 2x4 plates. And that means they run great along straight Lego tracks. However, it's not particularly smooth running going around curves. Fortunately, Lego provide you with these 2 turntable pieces in each set, and they show you later on in the instructions that you can just pop the wheels off, take off that 2x4 plate, add in the turntable, and then that will give you articulated wheels on each end. If we reinstate those, you can then see that they happily rotate. And if you do that to both ends, then the train can happily navigate Lego's tight curves. Now, I do really like the look that Lego went for with this coupling at the front and the back of the train. However, I don't like using these Technic Lego plates as connectors. Lego used them on the Lego City tram set recently, and I had a few problems trying to get the 2 carriages to connect closely using Technic pins and Technic lift arm pieces, and still get the carriage to navigate around the curves. I ended up having to leave a bigger gap between the carriages than I'd hoped I would, to ensure that the carriages could get round the curves. So my plan is I'm going to leave these on the 2 outer ends, which are never going to connect to anything else. However, on the 2 ends that are going to connect together, I'm going to use regular Lego magnetic couplings. So here's the bogie off the back of the carriage, which we're not going to motorise. So obviously, if you're just motorising one carriage, this is a step you won't need to do. And also, I just want to point out a really nice use for a silver minifig cup here, just to give it a little bit more extra detail underneath the train. Now, I haven't actually planned this out. However, I've made many train bogies in my life, and I just know that this needs to sit just on top of the front pair of wheels here. So first of all, let's take off these pieces. And then we've got, obviously, that front piece that Lego designed beautifully there. And we need to pop that onto just there. So we need to get a 1x2 plate just to pop in there. Now, I've got an orange 1x2 plate, and if we pop that on there, the coupling should just sit here. But I can see, because we've got those knot bricks there with studs on the side, that's not actually going to be able to sit there properly. So we need to remove those and replace it with something else. So underneath, we've just got a couple of 2x2 corner plates. Pop those off, and then one of the snot bricks came off with it. Get rid of the other grey one, and then here's a bracket piece under there as well. We could reinstate something under there if it's no, I think that'll be sturdy enough without, so I think we can just leave that off, and we can put our magnetic coupling on top. Now, we did have a 2x6 plate along here in black, but we also had those 2x4s which we used instead of the turntable, so we can pop one of those back on there. And then if we put the 2x4 tiles and the turntable back on, we've got our original bogie, but however, it's got a magnetic coupling on this end. So hopefully that should just sit happily underneath this end, like that. And there we've got our bogie reinstated, but it's now got a magnetic coupling. So with our 2 ends, which are going to join together, we've now got a magnetic coupling on one. However, we don't want to do the same modification in this one, as this is where we're going to need to stick our train motor. And as you can see, our bogie with the magnetic coupling is considerably shorter than a train motor. So this is going to be really easy to attach to the other carriage, just using that Technic pin on top. However, we are going to have to shorten the detail underneath. So here's the carriage with the space for the battery box, which we're motorising. We're going to pop that bogie off there, and then we're also going to take off all the detailing underneath by just pushing down on that part there, and then you can see our 2 cutouts. I'm going to add the motor through that Technic hole there, and that's really easy. That's too far forward. Let's move it back one into that middle hole, and that's still too far forward. Let's move it back another one. There we go. So now we've got our coupling and our motor ready to go. Now to work on the underside here, we need to get rid of this cable, so that just pops through the hole in the middle of the train base plate, and then that can attach to the battery box a little bit later on. So you can see from the original that we need to give 1 brick clearance between the bogie and all this detailing underneath, and we've got 3 of these 2x4s, so that means we've got 12 studs along each side. And conveniently, the train motor is 4 studs longer than our original bogies, so all we need to do is reduce this down by 1 of those 2x4s. And I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to do that without actually using any new extra pieces. So if we just take off that 4x8 on top, we can take some of these snot bricks off each end like that, and if we shuffle these down, let's put that one back on and then move these 2 down as well, like that. Then we've reduced it down by 4 bricks, and we can put that plate back on top, and then we've reduced it down without using any extra parts. Now we can't completely close up that hole because we need space for the wire to come through. So on this one, instead of using a 2x2, I actually used 2 2x1s, and we can remove those and just put 1 back on the end. And then when we pop that back in underneath, we've half closed up that hole, but we've still left space for the cable. And you can see here we've still got that 1 stud clearance at each end. However, I have noticed that this bogie this end, with that cup and the other parts here, this 4x8 plate now hits that as it tries to turn. So we do actually need to change that 4x8 plate for something a little bit shorter. So if I remove that 4x8 plate, I'm actually going to use the 3 2x4 tan plates, which were attached to all the bogies before we put the turntables on. And they will happily sit across there and keep those snot bricks tied together, and then hopefully when we reinstate that underneath the train like that, then yes, that piece now doesn't foul up with the plate here. It gives it gives the minifig cup a little bit of clearance. So we've now got our unmotorised carriage with the original end at this end and our magnetic coupling at the other end. So we're going to pop that on this track here like that. And then we've also got our new motorised one with the original end at this end and a motorised train motor at this end. So we're going to pop that on the track as well. Make sure the wheels are on, and hopefully, beautiful, that runs really nicely around the Lego curves. Now I'm using the Lego powered up system to motorise this train, and that's a system which comes in the current Lego City trains. We used to have the Lego power function system, but that required an extra box which had an infrared receiver. These are Bluetooth enabled, so we don't need that receiver. It's all built into the battery box. So we just need to click the motor into here like that, and then the battery box is going to sit right at the end of the carriage like that. And we could give it a little test if this is on. Make sure they turn the same colour, they're both blue. Let's give it a go, see what happens. Yay! So that works quite happily, backwards and forwards. And it'll definitely be strong enough to pull the other carriage as well. So now I need to build back up the sides of these trains and make them look pretty again. Now for the unmotorised version, that's really easy. Everything we took off, we just need to put back on. And I'm going to push that back down and make it secure. And that's our modified unmotorised car finished. We've got 1 driving position at this end, we've got a magnet coupling at the other, and we've spaced out the seating inside. However, for the motorised end, we do have to make a few tiny modifications. Now, because I wanted to keep the battery box as far down this end as possible so we could keep as much seating as possible, it does now foul with that arch piece up in the roof. So we're going to take all the windows off and reinstate those, and then we're going to find some replacement parts to build around the battery box. So that's now everything added back on. The only pieces that we haven't added on are these roof pieces attached to that arch, and they will actually, most of them will still fit on. We've got that plate which will go in the middle, and then we've got these 2x4 curved bricks with their plates. They will also sit on each side quite happily. I'm not pushing them down, just placing them for now. So the only bit that we can't put it back in is this arch piece and these brackets on top, which I don't think we're going to really need. So we're just going to need to get 2 1x1 bricks to go in the gaps above each of these door handles. So 2 more parts to add to the very short list of extra parts we've needed to do this, and we're just going to place those in the 2 gaps. So with all those roof pieces back in, the last part to go in is the 2x4 tile with the plate underneath. But I have just noticed that that is 1 plate too low. And I've had a quick look, and that's because when we changed that bracket piece here with the studs on the side for a brick, we were one plate too low. So this whole end is actually lower than the original is. So we do need to raise that up by one plate, and that's easy enough to do. Just get a 1x2 grey plate, and we're going to put that underneath the bracket for the sign. However, I'm actually going to put that further down than I said. I'm going to put it underneath the window. So we've got the brick down here. We're going to put our new plate underneath there, and that's because we've got a jumper plate here which has to sit in the middle of that bracket piece. If we put a plate up there, it wouldn't work. So we're going to put that back in, and then it will hopefully be the correct height for that 2x4 tile. And then when we pop that piece back in on top there, we've still got access to the battery box power button, either by removing this roof panel here, or it's fairly easy just to pop this piece with the window off to gain access from this side. So I think the only thing left to do is set up some track inside and give it a good run around the kitchen. But before I do, if you've liked what you've seen, please remember you can support the channel either by becoming a channel member, or if you buy things from lego.com using my affiliate link, which doesn't cost you anything, but Lego give me a small commission. But let me know what you think about these updates in the comments below, and if you've liked this video, please do give it a thumbs up. But of course, please subscribe for more Lego videos.